Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this editor webinar. Thank you for joining us. I'm Charlotte, and I'm part of the Learning and Content Management team, and I'll be hosting the session today. And I'm joined by my colleagues, Chandni. If you have a question at any time during today's session, please use the Q&A tab that you'll see at the bottom of your screen to send your question to us. And we'll try and answer as many as possible in the session today in the Q&A field. Please note that we can't answer anything journal specific, unfortunately. For the best view, you may wish to drag the central bar on your screen to the right to enlarge the screen that I'm sharing. Our session is being recorded today, and you'll be sent a link when the recording's ready. And our topic is Find Reviewers using Scopus. And I hope that in the next 45 minutes or so, we can enhance your understanding of this topic. So let's take a look at our agenda for today. We are going to be looking at 3 agenda topics. Firstly, we're going to ask, what is Find Reviewers? And I'm going to give you a definition for that. We also have termed it sometimes Find Reviewers using Scopus, and I'll explain the difference between that terminology. We're going to look at how you access Find Reviewers from Editorial Manager. And we're going to explore the Find Reviewers tool and look at the search and select options for finding reviewers. So what is Find Reviewers? Find Reviewers is a search tool that's available from within Editorial Manager that helps editors to find potential reviewers based on the Scopus database. So using extensive information about each candidate, including previous reviewing activity and how they're connected to the manuscript that you're looking at, we help you to evaluate each candidate before inviting them to review to optimize the chances of the invitation being accepted and successful. Find Reviewers is accessed from Editorial Manager via the Invite Reviewers action link. And then from the Reviewer Selection Summary page by clicking on the tab Find Reviewers using Scopus. And this is where we see the difference in terminology. In Editorial Manager, the tab that you need to click on is called Find Reviewers using Scopus. The tool itself is called Find Reviewers. So you may hear those terms used interchangeably. Very important to note that you will need to allow pop-ups in order to launch the Find Reviewers window. When you click on that tab in Editorial Manager, it will open a new window and you must have your pop-ups enabled. So let's move on and open Find Reviewers and take a closer look at the tool itself. A couple of things to remember before we do that. We're using a test site today, and you may notice some humorous names that are being used. This is to make sure that our test profiles are kept very separate to real live data. And also bear in mind that in the test environment, things will look slightly different to your live journal. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Some results take 24 hours to appear in Find Reviewers. So if you go into the tool and you don't see results in one of the search options, please try again tomorrow or a bit later. That will be the reason why it just takes a bit of time to generate the results. Important to note that while you have Find Reviewers open, you won't be able to access Editorial Manager. You'll need to close Find Reviewers or use the return button in Find Reviewers to reopen Editorial Manager where you were. And again, remember to allow your pop-ups. Okay, so I'm going to share with you now the Find Reviewers tool. You should see that on your screen. So this is the landing page for Find Reviewers. This is where you'll arrive whenever you open the tool. And what I'd like to do to start with is to do some site navigation, some basic kind of site navigation to walk you through what we're seeing, the layout and where things are, so you really familiarize yourself with the site. So firstly, on the left, we've got a list of the different sections, and these are the different types of searches that you can perform. And this list is configured by your journal, so you may not see everything that we're looking at today. It will really depend on your journal setup. But what I want to do today is walk you through all of the sections, educate you on all of them, so that you can take that knowledge away. When you access your live journal, you'll be really comfortable using whatever options there are available to you. And we really do encourage you to use all of the options. It's really important when you're searching for reviewers to spread your search methods, so you're accessing all of the different pools of reviewers that will be motivated and able to review for your journal. And it also helps us to address issues of inclusion and diversity when we're searching and selecting reviewers, if you're using all of the search options available to you. So we'll look at them all today, and then when you go to your live site, I really encourage you to use everything that's available to you. On the bottom of that list, we have some tools that you'll be using while you're in the system, and we'll look at those. And you can minimize or maximize this list with this arrow on the left there if you want to optimize your screen viewing while you're using the tool. Okay, so obviously the different search types, these different sections will operate in a different way, and we'll look at each of them in detail today. But when the results are returned, they are displayed in the same way. And that's what I want to look at now, is how the results display to you in the format and the similar things that you'll see each time. So I'm using system recommendations as our example for now. And this column here on the left middle is the list of results from this search type. So you'll always have your results in a list which displays the candidate name and high-level information. And you can scroll through that list. Along the top, you'll see some additional filtering options. So you can apply those to your search results once they're returned. The filtering options will vary depending on the search type, but as an example, you could choose to add some subject area or keyword filters to your results. Or, for instance, in this example, we can filter on connections with the journal. So you may choose to look at editorial board members or candidates who've published in your journal. And you can also change the order in which your search results are displayed. We'll talk a little bit more about how this works later on, but the option to change the sorting of the results is there as well. And then when we're looking at the list of results, and I mentioned that we're seeing high-level information about them, we have these flags applied to the profiles. So these are coloured flags that help us identify possible reasons to invite or not invite candidates. So if you're seeing red flags, these are possible detractors. So these might be reasons why you shouldn't invite this person as a reviewer. So it may be things like they're from the same country, they're forbidden by the journal, they're opposed by the author. And an important red flag is the number of reviews in progress. So in this example, we're seeing that they have 6 reviews in progress. They're already committed to a fairly high workload, and it would be probably wise to take your invitation elsewhere at this time. So that's a really helpful flag there, the reviews in progress. The blue flags are promoters. So these are reasons why you might want to invite this person as a reviewer. So it'll be things like they've published in your journal, they've reviewed for your journal, they're an editorial board member, for example. And then the grey flags are informational. So this is their H-index and their similar works. You'll also see any previous or current review invitation status. So you can see whether someone has already accepted an invitation, whether they've completed the review or whether they've declined the review. So all of that high-level information is available there. And then whichever candidate you're looking on, and you can just click between the profiles, on the right-hand side, we have much more detailed information about this individual. And this is where you can really explore their profile. You can do some analysis, some discovery about whether this person would be a suitable reviewer. And I'm just going to scroll through this section now to see the information that we're looking at here. You have the option to go and view their profile in Scopus if you would like to do that. And then scrolling down through their profile, you'll see their similar works and have access to that publication or those publications. You'll see their keywords and their Scopus subject areas. You'll see any connections to your journal. So they may have reviewed or perhaps they have authorship connections. And you'll also see any alerts. We talked about those red flags and the other flags that are available as high-level information. They're then repeated in this section here, so you have access to them. Again, if they had lots of reviews in progress, that would flag. And you'll see their reviewing history for your journal. So you'll be able to see how many reviews they have in progress, for instance, and also the dates. So the date they last completed or accepted a review, whether they have any outstanding invitations. And you can actually decide the time frame you want to look at for this. So you could make this very current, or you could perhaps look in the last couple of months. And you'll see that information for your journal and then also for other Elsevier journals. Again, the numbers of reviews in progress, the dates, outstanding invitations. So you can get a really good picture of their review history and also how busy they are at the moment, how responsive they are, that kind of thing. You have access to their publication history and also some statistics, so H-index, publication, citation statistics, for example. Additionally, if there are any people notes about this person in Editorial Manager, those will also be displayed in this section as well. Okay, so scrolling back up, we've had a look at the detailed information for that person. I'm just going to switch to another profile now just to demonstrate the next part. So with every profile, you'll see the option to add to manuscript. Now, if I click on this, I'm not sending an invitation at this point. We don't send any review invitations from the Find Reviewers tool. That still always happens in Editorial Manager. What I'm doing when I click on Add to Manuscript is I'm adding them to my shortlist. And I can select multiple people as I go through the different options, through the different search options, select Add to Manuscript, and I'm building up a shortlist as I go. Only when I click on Return to Submission at the top right will I then export those details back into Editorial Manager and from there be able to start the invitation process and send those invitations. So if you think of Add to Manuscript as shortlist and think of Return to Submission as export the details. As you're clicking Add to Manuscript, the details will be captured for you under the Selected Candidates section on the left-hand side of the screen. And we'll have a look at this section towards the end of the session, but as you go, it's basically saving those details there for you. There are limits applied to how many people you can add to your shortlist, and that's to respect the time and workload of the reviewers. And the system will alert you as you approach that limit and then when you reach it. Okay, so we've had a little look around the system. I'd like to talk now about conflict of interest. Find Reviewers gives you transparency and control over the conflict of interest settings that are being used and applied. And there are some differences between the search options and how the conflict of interest works. So I want to talk about that, and then I want to show you how to access the conflict of interest settings. The section we're looking at the moment, system recommendations, this applies an automatic filter to the results that you're seeing in the column here, where it filters out the authors, the co-authors of the manuscript. It will also filter out anyone that they have authored with in the last 3 years. So you won't see those people in your results. If there are authorship connections outside of that 3-year time frame, then that will be flagged to you with a red flag. And that filtering is done automatically. You can't change that. That will automatically be applied to the results that you see in system recommendations. The other search options don't have that automatic filter in place. They will alert you to any connections like that through the flags. But you do see the add to conflict of interest button that is allowing you to add additional people to the checks. So I'm going to go to session preferences now. This is a section on the left-hand side, and this is where we see the conflict of interest settings, and this is going to help us understand this more. So I click on the section and move to the conflict of interest tab. And what I'm seeing now is the list of people to whom the conflict of interest checks are being applied. So this is giving me my transparency. And then I've got the option to include or exclude these candidates. And that's where I'm getting an element of control. You'll notice if someone is unavailable in the conflict of interest, that will be because they don't have a connected Scopus profile. It will also alert you if someone has multiple Scopus profiles. So if I go back to my example on the screen, and I'm just going to scroll through my search list results. A good example is where we have an author suggested reviewer. If you click on that person, you may wish to add them to the conflict of interest to perform additional checks. And you'll see that the additional selection has been added at the bottom. They're now included, and you would need to click Apply Changes, and then you would see those checks through the different search types using the flag system. So it would give you that extra level of control and transparency. I'm going to share a short video guide with you as well at the end of this session about the conflict of interest on Find Reviewers and how that works. While I'm here in the session preferences section, I also want to look at the Matching Works tab. This is important because this is the setting that lots of the search methods use to order the results. So this is taking the abstract and keywords of the manuscript you're looking at, and it's finding the best match through the publications of the candidates using their Scopus profile, and it will order them accordingly. It will do that automatically, but from this session preferences section, you also have control over this setting. So you might want to add additional keywords to that ordering process, or you may wish to remove some of the keywords that are being used. And you can also access the suggested manuscript keywords from the author. You can additionally apply some any or all filters as well to narrow or widen your results. So if you think of the session preferences section as giving you control over the Matching Works sorting of your search results, and transparency and control over the conflict of interest. And you find session preferences on the bottom left-hand side. Just up from session preferences is your manuscript details. So this is helpful if you want to check the keywords or classifications, or perhaps the title or authorship of the manuscript that you're working with. Okay, so we've done some site navigation now, and I've also introduced a couple of the tools that you'll be using. I'm now going to work my way through the search options on the left-hand side here. So looking again at system recommendations, this search option is slightly different to the others because it works with an algorithm to generate the list of best matches or best potential matches for the manuscript. So it's looking at the manuscript details and using the Scopus profiles, it's bringing together a list of potential candidates who would be a good match. And it's then applying a ranking algorithm to using connections to your journal to then present them to you in the order of that you see on the screen. So it's based on that algorithm. You can then apply additional filters, as we talked about. And as I said, one of the good things about the filter on this option is that you can pick up some of the other search types and build them into your results on system recommendations. So this is a really powerful tool. It works on a really powerful algorithm. It gives you 100 results in this column here. And again, you'll have the detailed information of all of the candidates. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to the keyword search. So this search option allows you to manipulate the search based on keywords, and you can free type in the keywords that you want to perform a search on. There is an auto type in place, so if I start to type something, it will auto populate the keywords that exist in Scopus, and this is to make sure that I'm always returning a match on the search that I do. So I'll choose from one of the possibilities here and click Add. I then also have access to the keywords entered by the author during the submission process, and also the classifications that the author has selected if your journal uses those. And I can choose to include or exclude them with a click. I can then choose to search since in a particular time frame, so I might like to expand that or make it more recent. And by default, this will search on all. So it's looking for profiles that contain all of the keywords in that time frame. That's fine if you have a couple of keywords, but if you're using a lot of keywords to search, you might wish to change the search to any in order to broaden your search results. Click search, and the results will return in exactly the same way that we saw in the previous search method. I can't click search today because it will return us live results. But if you just remember how the results were returned, that you have your list on the left-hand side, your filters across the top, your detailed candidate information, and your option to add to manuscript or add to conflict of interest. That's how the display will work with the keyword search. And on the top right, there'll be an option to edit your search to return you back to this screen and make any changes. Okay, moving on to the author search. This allows you to search for specific people using any or all of the criteria that you see here. So first and last name, affiliation, email address. Here, you'll also have access to any reviewers that the author has suggested, if that's part of the submission process, and you can add them and click search. Again, I can't search in this method today because it will return live results, but they will return in the same way that we've just been looking at, with the results on the left and the detailed information about the candidates on the right. I'm not going to cover referenced authors today. This was a trial section that we did earlier this year. We had some great feedback. We've now rolled it back and we're working on making it even better. We're going to bring it back. You may have seen it previously. It's not available at the moment. We hope to reintroduce it soon with the improvements that we've been able to make. So I'm going to move on to interested reviewers. This section is showing us a list of researchers who have explicitly registered their interest in reviewing for your journal via their profile in Elsevier's Reviewer Hub. So they've gone into the Reviewer Hub, they've searched for your journal, and they've said, yes, I would like to review for your journal, which is fantastic. Obviously, this is a group of very motivated candidates. We do see fantastic response rates from them in terms of accepting invitations and completing reviews. I say this with a word of caution about overusing this. This is obviously a very valuable pool of reviewers. It's great to invite a couple of candidates each time, or perhaps one, but please don't over invite from this pool of reviewers, just to preserve the time and capacity of those interested reviewers. Again, we're seeing the results in the same way. You'll notice now that the sort is by matching works. And actually, that was the case when we looked at the keyword search and the author search. The results are being returned in order of matching works. And you'll remember that we saw that setting in session preferences. You can change the order, and you can add your additional filters. You have your flags showing you information, your detailed information, and the option to add to manuscript or conflict of interest. Next up, we have the journal reviewers section. So this is effectively your reviewer database. It's not showing us results today because we're in the test environment. But what this will show you is people who already exist in your Editorial Manager database who also have a connected Scopus profile. So you'll see those people here. Again, you'll have your filters available, you'll have your flags, you'll have that option to really explore their profile in much more detail than you do in Editorial Manager. So this is a helpful tool for you. And finally, we have editorial board members. So these are people that have been identified as editorial board members. If there are people that you see here that are no longer part of the editorial board for your journal, or perhaps you don't find people here that you're expecting to, that's something that you need to contact your publisher about. Again, this is restricted to people who have that connected Scopus profile, which may be a reason. If you see someone in Editorial Manager and you don't see them here, that might be one of the reasons. The editorial board members and the interested reviewers are good examples of sections that you may not see in your live environment. If you haven't had interested reviewers register their interest, or you don't have editorial board members, then you may not see those sections. But if and when they become available to you, hopefully from today, you'll understand and know how to use them. Okay. Great. All right. So we've worked our way through the sections now. I'm going to look at selected candidates. So if you remember, this was where we were building up our shortlist. And I was saying that when we were clicking Add to Manuscript, when we go to the Selected Candidates section, and I think it's just catching me up. Let's jump around a little bit here. It doesn't want to open for me. Okay, that's a shame. I'm hoping that's going to catch me up in a moment. You'll have to bear with me while I talk through the selected candidate section. Let's just try and give it a nudge. I'll just refresh my screen. You'll remember that I was saying this is our shortlist that we're building up. So we're going to see people here that you've been, there it is. You're going to see people here that we've been selecting as we've gone through the system. So as a reminder, if I go into a search tab and I click on a profile and I click Add to Manuscript, and then I could go to another search tab and I could click Add to Manuscript, and I can keep going through the search options and making my selections. It's saving those as I go. It will alert me if I approach a limit. And then now, when we look at selected candidates, this is showing how I wanted it to. I'm seeing the selections that I've made during my session today. You can see the people information, and you can also still see the flags, which is really helpful. So that will be a reminder if there are any red flags here that you maybe need to investigate a little bit further. You have the option to view their profile in Scopus, and the arrow on the right-hand side will also bring up their detailed profile that you've been looking at in Find Reviewers if you want to go through and have another look at that as part of this kind of evaluation process that you're doing now. You can also choose to remove them from the manuscript at that point. And additionally, it shows you where you selected that person from. So the different search options. And that's really helpful because if you remember earlier, I said to really try and use the different options that are available to you because it helps to access all of the pools of reviewers and it helps with issues of inclusion and diversity. So this section here is really your chance for an evaluation before we start the invitation process. So you can be looking at things like gender, location, career stage, and really making sure that you're being inclusive, being diverse, and selecting the absolute best match for the manuscript. You'll also see details of any previous invitation or review activity that's happened from previous sessions in Find Reviewers or from activity in Editorial Manager. So this is really nice. You can see, who's accepted, who's completed. You can also see invitations that have been declined or terminated or uninvited. So it's giving you a really good picture of the review status for this manuscript from the selected candidates section. And so your next step will be going to the Return to Submission button at the top right-hand side. And if you remember, I said that's when we're going to be exporting these details back into Editorial Manager. And from there, we'll start the review invitation process. A helpful feature is that you can drag and drop these results before you export them. So if you're thinking that this might be an alternate reviewer, and these two are your primary reviewers, then you can drag and drop the order so that when they go back into Editorial Manager, they're already ordered for you. It's a really nice, easy way to do it here before you do that. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit now about what happens when we export those details back to Editorial Manager. But before we leave Find Reviewers, there's one last thing that I want to say and show you, and that is the question mark icon on the bottom right-hand side here. Clicking on this opens up our resource center in Find Reviewers, and here you'll see announcements that share helpful information with you. So you may have seen the webinar sign up for today in this box. There'll be short video guides shared here, learning resources, and also announcements letting you know about new and key features that have just been released. So it's a really helpful point of information here. If there are announcements that you haven't yet viewed, you'll see the number to let you know that there's something new for you to read. And this is also a place where you can provide us with feedback. So if you've been using the Find Reviewers tool, you have some feedback for us, then you can click on this and it will take you to a short form. And that's a really good way to provide us with some feedback about your experience using the tool. So that's available from the question mark on the bottom right-hand side there. Okay, so we were about to click on Return to Submission. And I'm going to switch back to our slides now and show you how the two options that happen once we return back to Editorial Manager. Okay, so after we've clicked on Return to Submission, as I said, you're going to be exporting those details from Find Reviewers back into Editorial Manager. And at that point, you will basically have two options. If the candidate's profile already exists in your Editorial Manager database, you'll be able to invite them immediately, as you would through a normal invitation process. If they do not yet have a profile in your journals database, then you'll first need to proxy register them, but you will then also be able to immediately send them the invite. There's no delay. We just introduce the proxy registration as a step of that invitation process. And they will have two notifications from you. They will have the notification that they've been proxy registered and their review invitation. The proxy registration effectively creates a placeholder for them in your journal database, and they will need to log into the system and verify that profile within 7 days, otherwise it will be deleted. And this screenshot is what you will see in Editorial Manager. It's alerting you to the fact that you're going to proxy register them, and then you can go ahead and proceed, and Editorial Manager will take you through those steps. I'll summarize just by saying that we're going to send you some helpful links in the next couple of days. So we're going to share the recording of this webinar with you if you want to listen back. We're also going to share some short video guides. So I mentioned the conflict of interest video guide. We also have a video guide on find reviewers using Scopus. So those 2 video guides are going to come directly to you. And I'm also going to share the link to the self-help editor guide in Editorial Manager, which you may find helpful whilst you're working in Editorial Manager and accessing reviewers and perhaps exporting those results back. That self-help guide will help you. So please look out for that email. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again. We'll remain on the call for just another minute to see if there's any questions. Otherwise, I'll say thank you very much and have a nice day.